do not pay ransom for hostages.
We paid $400 million for the hostages, right? Such a bad precedent. 2 more have been kidnapped since then. You know that, right?
The Trump White House has secured the release of at least 21 Americans held abroad, further reiterating the notion America First policies prompt respect internationally. President Trump's deep personal investment has played a significant role in bringing the nearly 24 Americans home. On this episode of PMPK, we will explore just how this relatively unspotlighted achievement has been nonetheless one of the most notable of the Trump White House. I'm Bailee Byers, and you're watching episode 15 of Promises Made, Promises Kept. Former President Barack Obama was widely known for his faulty tactics and national security mishaps when dealing with hostage situations. Now, let's take a look at some of his most notable missteps and see how he ultimately paved the way for President Trump's immense success. Families with loved ones held abroad grew restless and often criticized the previous administration's efforts to recover American hostages. The Obama administration's faulty strategies can be represented by 2 main incidents: the Bergdahl exchange and a prisoner dilemma with Iran, which ended with $400 million being gifted to Tehran. Bo Bergdahl, former Army sergeant, was captured back in 2009 while serving in Afghanistan and held hostage by the Haqqani network until 2014. Despite pleading guilty to desertion and misbehavior before the enemy charges, Obama praised him and ultimately released 5 Taliban jihadists in exchange for his release. Less than 2 years later, Obama continued to build upon that legacy when he sent $400 million in cash to Tehran after the release of several American detainees. He vehemently denied it was ransom, saying the cash delivery spurred from a failed arms deal when Iran was a U.S. ally back in the 1970s. The Islamic Republic had paid for military equipment before the revolution, but the money remained frozen in an account for decades. The former president ultimately agreed to send the money back and approved another nearly $1.8 billion payment to Tehran to cover interest. As criticism mounted over the administration's handling of hostage situations, the White House ultimately created the Hostage Recovery Fusion Cell in response. President Trump compounded upon this policy change and has ultimately reinvigorated the American standard for bringing hostages home.
We are very happy to have Aya back home, and it's a great honor to have her in the Oval Office with her brother, and thank you very much.
President Trump's immense personal investment and assertive negotiation skills have prompted respect around the globe, to a degree not achieved since the Reagan administration. Now, let's take a look at one of the first cases to garner international attention: the release of Aya Hijazi in April of 2017. President Trump worked directly with the Egyptian government to secure the release of Aya Hijazi, a humanitarian aid worker, after the Obama administration had failed to do so. Hijazi was imprisoned alongside her husband for nearly 3 years in Cairo, facing allegations of child abuse, while her trial was repeatedly delayed and witnesses disappeared. The pair was arrested back in 2014 after starting a nonprofit to educate street children. Her imprisonment was, according to many experts, part of a nationwide crackdown targeting nonprofits and other NGOs across the country. President Trump received flack for meeting with his Egyptian counterpart, Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, earlier in the month, but reports suggest he was working diligently behind the scenes to secure Aya's release. Aya was flown home on a military plane not long after the meeting. President Trump's next high-profile case occurred in May of 2018, when he secured the release of 3 American detainees held by North Korea. Prior to the release of the 3 Americans detained in North Korea, relations with the regime were virtually non-existent, but icy at best. But early in the morning on May 10, 2018, President Trump welcomed the trio home as they arrived on American soil, forever changing the trajectory of relations with the Hermit Kingdom. President Trump praised this major foreign policy achievement, and even Kim Jong-un himself saying, quote, "I really think we have a very good chance of doing something very meaningful." The trio's arrival predated the first meeting between President Trump and Kim Jong-un, and ultimately set the stage for what would pave the road to denuclearizing the Korean Peninsula. The men touted President Trump for efforts to secure their release, voicing their gratification to finally be back home on U.S. soil.
Well, we're starting off on a new footing. This is a wonderful thing that he released the folks early. That was a big thing, very important to me. It's never been taken this far. There's never been a relationship like this, and we're starting from here. But I really think a lot of progress has been made, and we'll see what happens. We're talking about a few weeks. I guess many of you will be with us, but some great things can happen, and that's what we hope.
A heartwarming homecoming which particularly tugged at American heartstrings was the arrival of Pastor Andrew Brunson, who was held in Turkey for 2 years. President Trump stopped at nothing to secure his release, despite the fact Turkey has a reputation worldwide for imprisoning journalists and cracking down on political opposition. President Trump welcomed Pastor Brunson and his wife to the White House on October 13, 2018, congratulating him for how he, quote, galvanized the country surrounding his case. Brunson expressed sincere gratitude to President Trump and other officials involved in securing his release, highlighting the president's deep engagement and commitment in bringing him home. President Trump congratulated him in response, saying his faith and strength throughout the terrorizing 2 years was something to be recognized. The president also clarified there was no deal made to secure his release, despite fake accusations by the mainstream media. Pastor Brunson was originally detained back in 2016 over allegations he was involved in a failed coup attempt against the Erdogan regime. Turkish officials accused the American pastor of engaging in espionage to help terror groups, a common accusation the government engages in to crack down on political opposition. Brunson vehemently denied the allegations and was ultimately held behind bars as President Erdogan remonopolized control over the nation. Brunson had been living in Turkey for decades before he was detained, in an effort to spread God's word to the people of Turkey.
And again, we've been negotiating long and hard. We do not pay ransom in this country, at least any longer. We won't pay ransom. Otherwise you have big problems and lots of things will happen, lots of bad things will happen. But it started in a different administration and they were not going to work out anything. And we took it over, we inherited it.
Before President Trump took office, securing the release of American hostages and detainees held abroad was categorized by a lack of communication among clusters of agencies working on the same cases. But now President Trump has taken the wheel, personally inserting himself into each one of the cases directly to ensure all Americans have a chance to return home. That wraps it up for this episode of PMPK. If you have any feedback or questions regarding this episode or others, you can reach me on Twitter at Byers_Bailee. Thanks for watching. See you next time on Promises Made, Promises Kept.